What is up, homies? Welcome back to another review from Heroes Reforged. We are talking about Dune Part 1. We'll be talking about a little bit of non-spoilers, a little bit of spoilers as well, but we will definitely let you know when we transition to that territory. Augustine and I saw it in Dolby Cinema. Hector, you saw it in 3D, correct?
It was tight, dude. It was real. Let me tell you this. My thinking before going to see it was, I bet you the space shots, and there's not a whole lot. I bet you the space shots are gonna look sick, and they did, dude. It was super, super cool when we're like outside of a planet, and then there's this big weird ship, and then like the little ships are coming out of it.
Yeah.
Those kinds of shots, I was like, wow, it was really, really great. So fingers crossed, just to fill everybody in, like the last Denis Villeneuve movie that he did that was in 3D, I think was Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Best Buy had the exclusive 3D Blu-ray, which means it was released in North America. So I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, Dune comes out 3D Blu-ray somewhere on the planet. And I'll import it, and it'll be cool. But so if that makes you feel like, oh, I don't want to miss it in theaters, like hopefully they'll just do what they did with Blade Runner. But you never know. There's been a bunch of movies this year that were released in 3D, and now never again. Poof, in the wind.
Like a turd in the wind.
But it sucks because it's like you guys went to go see it Dolby IMAX.
Yeah. Dolby Cinema.
Yeah.
Dolby Cinema. You also can't recreate that at home, and that was an experience, I bet. So there's like all these now. There's like multiple formats of movies that I want to see. Yeah. That it's like you got to go to the theater multiple times to catch up with the version of these movies. So
and also October was kind of tough because we had No Time to Die came out, and that came out in IMAX and 3D and Dolby Cinema and regular. Dune did the same thing. Eternals is doing the same thing. So because there aren't enough 3D and IMAX theaters, just generally, these movies are being rotated out so fast. So it's like you have to see it in 5 days or you're not going to see it. And it's like, okay, I better clear my schedule if I'm going to try to go see this movie in IMAX and in 3D.
I better clear 16 hours out of my day.
Seriously. Well, and because we saw Eternals in IMAX, but that was because we were invited to a screening. When it came to Dune, we just went out on our own on a Sunday morning. And I'm super glad we got the Dolby Cinema experience, but man, it's like
cool.
These movies the turnover is so fast. You blink and it's gone.
Yeah. And it's always the biggest, newest movie, and gone are the days of catching a movie a few weeks after it's been out, and you go to the theater on a Sunday morning and it's kind of empty and it's nice. No, you got to go when it's kind of packed and come on, AMC, we're trying to avoid coronavirus. Come on.
In terms of our history with it, Hector, you've read the book. I have not read the book. And I saw the David Lynch movie, the version, when I was in high school. So I haven't seen it in years. So I feel like I'm very, very disconnected from Dune in terms of like the lore and the fandom. But the thing that kept pulling me into this movie was Denis Villeneuve, because after Blade Runner and even Sicario and Prisoners and all that stuff, like he's one of my favorite directors. So I had a lot of high hopes for this movie. And non-spoiler, I loved this movie. Like I thought it was a really, really, really well done film. But for you, as someone who has read the book, what was that experience like going into that movie?
Honestly, I normally say that I think it's better to watch the movie before reading the book. And I'm rare. I will say that 9 times out of 10. But in the case of Dune, I think that I'm glad that I had some familiarity with the story, especially because we can talk about it in the spoiler section, but I also feel like I am basing my appreciation of this film knowing what comes next, knowing what comes in part 2. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, I can't judge this movie as a movie by itself either, because I do have knowledge of like, well, I know what they're going to do with this character. I know what they're going to do with the story. I have an idea roughly of what Dune Part 2 is going to encompass. I haven't read anything past the first Dune book, so I also feel disconnected, even though I read the first Frank Herbert Dune novel. I haven't read Dune Messiah or any of the stuff that comes after. And I have some friends that are real Dune heads, and they filled me in on like the long game, because it's a long game, brothers. This thing goes. This is like if this movie was episode 4 in New Hope, and like they're planning to do a full 9 episodes of the Star Wars saga. Do you know what I'm saying? That also colored a lot of my viewing of the movie. But Adam, I also, overall, non-spoiler thoughts, I really, really, really enjoyed it. Parts of it I loved, moments I loved, and I think I liked it more than Blade Runner 2049, which is a sequel I already dug and owned the Blu-ray and like pop that shit in all the time. I think it's super cool. I'm like, I think I liked Dune. I think Dune was there were things that felt a little uneven for me for Blade Runner, but with Dune, it felt like a more complete, like Denis Villeneuve and everybody making the movie really just filled it out.
Yeah.
You know, they like production design, the cast, the world, the writing just really felt full, even though like 3 things happen in this movie and then it's done. So,
what did the imagery live up to what you had built up in your head after reading the book?
oh yeah, pretty much met
Okay.
it or exceeded it, especially because I also recently watched the 80s version of Dune, that movie, and that movie's a trip, dude. That movie is a trip and a half.
It's a David Lynch movie.
It's hilarious. It's also a David Lynch, but it's also pretty accurate to what the book is. So like anytime there's some weird shit that happens, I'll tell you the weirdest thing from the David Lynch movie that I don't think is in the book is that David Lynch in the 80s thought that the character should have pets and they should have pugs. So a lot of characters are just holding little pug dogs. They're called like the war pugs. Like these pugs are somehow involved in the skirmish. I'm like, that's David Lynch. But the crazy, if you guys did enjoy this movie and anybody watching at home, like went to go see Dune, kind of like Adam and Augustine, a little fresh, and you're into it enough that you would want to check out the 80s movie, I say do it. I think it is worth watching for sure. But just know that like, it'll probably spoil you for what happens in Dune Part 2. There's some weirdness in that movie that they left out of this movie that is from the book that I was frankly surprised. I'm like, oh, they didn't really go over this. But then they really went into detail with this scene and this character. And, you know, so there's still shortcuts that they take to do the movie version. But the imagery exceeded my expectations. I thought that this movie looked so good. The world looked amazing. The vehicles, the costumes, you know, even things that I didn't think were that interesting or impressive, whether reading the book or watching the 80s movie, things like the still suits, the clothing that they wear in the desert. In this movie, I was like, I think this is pretty cool. It's basically the same as the 80s version. And I still was like, oh, sick, cool. This is cool.
Yeah.
You know, the force fields, the personal force fields, all that stuff was pretty dope. So, Augustine, what was your take on this? I'm assuming you had not seen the 80s movie in high school like Adam did.
Nothing.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I came in absolutely fresh. I was honestly very much looking forward to it because this is how I came into the Lord of the Rings franchise. I never read anything Lord of the Rings. I didn't know what Lord of the Rings was before the movies came out, actually. The same thing with Dune. I had to ask people, I was like, wait, is Dune, what is Dune? I'd never really heard of Dune. Nobody in my circle ever talked about Dune. Never read it in school or anything like that. And so I was really actually blown away by this movie. Even though very little happens, I think it was told in a very smart way because at the very beginning, I'll admit I was lost with everything, like the houses that were going on, what exactly was happening on this planet, who was in this cologne commercial, and like what exactly was just going on overall, you know? I think after the first third of the movie, the story fell into such a cool groove and like I was just so immersed with the cinematography, the world building, the writing, just everything was so polished up so well that I just was buying into it. That was the point where I was just like, yes, I'm here. I'm locked in. This is what I want to see. And it continued all the way throughout. And now I'm a big fan. And it did the job of making me want more at the end. By the end when the end came, I was like, dude, I've been here for almost 3 hours and I want more. So I think that's really the best praise I could give the movie, that it did a good job of just immersing me in this universe. And now Adam and I were talking about this on the car ride home, actually, where we're like, maybe I don't even want to look into the Dune universe more before I see the next movies, because I don't want anything spoiled for me. I want to go into the next movies without the baggage of 10 years of anything else that's happened. I just want to know what they're presenting and how they're presenting, because for the first time in a long time, I was really blown away. The VFX were some of the best VFX I've seen probably ever, honestly. Like they were really, really good. Only matched, I would say, by the VFX in Eternals. I would say they're like shot for shot. I think it's
to be
really
totally
good.
honest with you, I never expected that.
No,
and that's not to say that the Eternals VFX are bad, or not to say that the VFX in Marvel movies are always bad, but you can always kind of tell when sometimes like, oh man, they're definitely in a rush to make this release date. Obviously, with Eternals, they had a whole extra year, so I think that made a huge difference.
Yeah, hopefully. I remember that you had seen Dune before me, and then we all went to go see Eternals, and you guys were comparing it visual effects wise. You guys were really saying like, Hector, wait till you go see Dune. And that seemed like high praise for Eternals, because you were like, we have just seen Dune, and we're still.
It was like the day before we saw it.
You know? That's crazy. These are both
So,
big,
great.
sprawling movies, you know, comparatively
Exactly.
to other stuff.
And
So,
comparatively, like both of
yeah,
these stories, and I don't want to compare both movies because they both do different
Yeah.
things.
totally.
But at the same time, both movies are presenting really big, wide, huge ideas. And they attack it's just interesting to see the way different filmmakers can attack big ideas like this.
Yeah.
You know, like
absolutely.
the Eternals movie went very much character heavy, where Dune could have gone the same way, but we kind of boil it down to its essence. And I think that's more the approach that Peter Jackson took on Lord of the Rings as well.
Mhm.
Is that like there's so many characters that you could build this world around. He did the controversial move of removing Tom Bombadil completely from the story. And
Good.
like he's just yeah, right. It's controversial though. Talk to Chris Bramante and
I
he'll
know.
fight you tooth and
I know.
nail. And
Jason
you know,
Charles
like,
Miller's in the same boat. He's in the same boat. I know.
Just like talk to other people and they'll be like, no, that was dumb. They shouldn't remove Tom Bombadil. But I think overall, the way they reduced the story, the way they told it, just everything blended so well that I was just into it.
I feel like some Dune heads might come for me, but I'm like, I don't think they cut any characters from the book for this film, for Dune. I really don't. I think that they may have pushed a few characters into the background a little bit. I'll give you example. Oh, wait. Shit.
I'll bleep it out.
Damn it. Bleep that whole
Adam,
section.
cut it out. Cut it out.
Can we talk spoilers, gentlemen? Can we get into the spoilers?
Look, overall, I would say we all really like this movie. Should you go see it? Absolutely. Go find the biggest IMAX screen or 3D screen that you can find.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Watch it in the biggest format possible that you can find anywhere.
I don't think it's a super accessible sci-fi movie that is a crowd pleaser. I don't think this is Star Wars and it's not for everybody. My mom did not enjoy the movie.
Right.
So I think that, but I totally agree with you guys. Go see it because I feel like people who, out of most people who go see it, I think there's going to be a handful of people that are like, this is entirely my jam. I love Dune. And everyone else will be like, Dune was good or fine.
I feel like that was kind of the similar case with Blade Runner. People who liked Blade Runner and consider it a classic loved 2049, and people who were kind of like, yeah, Blade Runner's cool. They didn't feel any more or less towards 2049.
Interestingly, like Blade Runner, and I know I've seen people online who like the original Blade Runner and really dislike the new one. And I've seen people who prefer the 80s David Lynch movie and really dislike this one. And when I see some arguments like that, I tend to be like, I don't know if I guess we just want different things from movies, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
But but this movie isn't perfect. But I feel like a lot of if there's issues in the movie, frankly, I think it just goes back to well, that's what was in the book, kind of a thing, like what Frank Herbert is setting up. But let's talk spoilies. Spoiler alert is up. Adam, please bleep all that. What I was going to say is that there's characters like Dr. Yue who are a little bit more upfront in the David Lynch movie and in the book, but I think were purposefully put in the background just a little bit in this movie because it's like, well, if you learn more about the guy before the big reveal, you'll see it coming a mile away. Like he, you know, I think in the story and maybe in the 80s version, somebody talks to him and he's like, oh, my wife, and I'll see her at some point, but we're apart and we're away or something. So you go, okay, that's what the guy's motivation
they very
is.
lightly allude to in this movie at one point, but not heavy enough, I think. And I agree. I think it's done purposefully because I think it would be too obvious of like, I mean, I definitely watching the movie was like, Dr. Yue seems nice, but there's something just slightly off. But I didn't think to that extent, which was kind of a massive plot point in the movie.
I also want to say something too, to Augustine's point. This movie does not go heavy on characters. It doesn't try to like update a lot of characters' language, but it still does some. Because there's moments where it's in the trailer where Momoa is like, look at you putting on a little muscle. And he's like, really? No, not at all. Like that's completely colloquial and modern, and that's how we talk. And I don't think the characters in Dune, the novel, talk like that. But I'm glad they did those little touches. And even the way that they, like Keller saw the film and he was saying that he felt that there was a real coldness to the movie, which I think is fair. But like reading the book for the first time last year, watching the 80s the David Lynch version, I felt like there was a lot of warmth in scenes, even when, like, again, when Oscar Isaac is talking to his lady Jessica, who's technically not his wife. He's not married to her, but they're together and they have a son. And he goes, I wish we had more time. If something happens to me, will you protect our son? And she goes, with my life. And he goes, I'm not talking to my wife. I'm talking to Benny Gesserit. I'm talking to, like, and she was taken aback. Like these moments, even though they're full of like Dune space age lingo shit that you might not know what it is, I felt the emotion. I felt the relationship between these two parents and their kid, the mom and Paul especially. Just the moment again. And I think they pulled the right moments for the trailer when Oscar Isaac's Leto Atreides is like, even if you didn't do all of this other shit, you would still be exactly what I needed you to be. Be my son.
Right.
And I was like,
that to me was my favorite moment. One of my favorite moments with him, just because in such a short amount of time, Oscar Isaacs was able to deliver. Like we had barely any time to get to know him as a character. But we immediately get to know that he's a loving father just by that short scene.
Totally.
And you get to trust him. And then that builds the trust when they move onto the planet where you're like, okay, I believe Oscar Isaac wants to save these people on the ship, wants to help these people on this planet. Like he's a good human being. And that's why I said that I love that way that they efficiently told this story, because it could easily get lost in like, let's really dive into and like flood the story with him being a loving guy or something,
Yeah. And I think the other thing too that really works for me is, like you're saying, that one moment, because Duke does feel a little cold in the beginning. And even though he might have some quippy moments with Gurney, you're still kind of like, I don't know how I feel about him. Is he a good person, a good father? And then you start to unravel a little bit of that. And then him and Paul have that moment and you're like, okay, this is a man who cares about his family. His family really does matter. People matter to him. So, when he accepts this mission, you know that his intentions, at least hopefully, that his intentions are good and not to take advantage of the situation.
I want to highlight the casting of this movie.
God damn.
Because the casting in the movie, I think, is a double-edged sword. I think on the one hand, it is some of the best casting I've seen in a big movie like this. And even just casting Oscar Isaac, I think, gets us to trust him.
Yeah.
Casting Rebecca Ferguson as the Lady Jessica gets you to know that she has a lot of power. I'm thinking of her character in Dr. Sleep. Like, she's terrifying, and yet I trust her. Mission Impossible. Like, I'm like, she's a good guy. She's a good guy. Like, Josh Brolin, Jason Momoa, those are fantastic pieces of casting. The wonderful actor, I want to bring up his name, who first of all, David Desmalchin is one of the bad guys. Was so good. And David Desmalchin, and most of the roles he's played, he'll play a character like that. So when you see him, unfortunately, the movie brain goes like, that's a bad guy. Like even though he's awesome and I love him. I want to highlight this character who plays Thufir Hawat.
Oh, I love Stephen McKinley Henderson. I love this actor so much.
I adore this guy, and
I want to like hug him and just spend an evening with him in a fire, just like drinking and sharing stories.
One of these advisors to the Atreides family and stuff. Like all of the casting was great, and I think it was done in a way kind of like Marvel movies where they cast certain actors and you immediately feel a way about that character. Thinking of Kumail in Eternals, like you just you feel, because you bring what you know about this actor with you. But I also want to mention, too, that I think that one of the biggest, if not the biggest pieces of controversy for the film, and it's totally valid and fair, is like they should have made more of an effort to cast Middle Eastern or Egyptian or North African actors to play some, because the whole point of Dune and what Frank Herbert did, he took a whole bunch of it from actual Middle Eastern culture because of what he was trying to say politically, what he was trying to say, in terms of what the environment, how important it is, and all that other stuff. So like, if we're drawing from those cultures and it's inspired by, and he's pulling a bunch of stuff in, if you watch the 80s Dune movie, you hear the word a lot. And if you read the book, it's in the book. And I think they didn't do it in this because the word has taken on a different meaning post 9/11 politically, but they say the word jihad a lot in the story. And Frank Herbert wrote this shit in the 60s. Like, and we know of that word differently in our upbringing, in our life, because of politically what we had to deal with, post September 11th and stuff. So like, but does that mean that they could have had Middle Eastern actors playing some of the Atreides family? Yeah. But they've had some Middle Eastern actors playing the Fremen, who are supposed to be the people inspired by those cultures. Yes. Absolutely. But it's a thing where, like, do you want to avoid stereotypes? Yes. The Fremen seem like they're mostly people of color. And I think that shit is on purpose, right? Denis Villeneuve said that he fell in love with Dune when he found a book when he was young, and it had a black person on the cover with those blue eyes. So he thought of, and even if it was a French version of the book, and even if it wasn't intended to be a black person or an African person or a person of African descent, he saw that with the blue eyes. So he pictured the Fremen as being black or African or, desert people. That's what he pulled. So like he's doing that, and you've got Javier Bardem and Zendaya and all these amazing actors who, like the actress who plays Liet Kynes, who's supposed to be Fremen but also not, is Sharon Duncan Brewster. Like just really, really amazing actors, really, really great actors. And so this criticism that's coming out is like there should have been more of that, and that's true. But it's also like that's not the biggest cast for this first part of Dune.
Right.
And without giving too much away, the world does expand. So like, is there an opportunity for Denis Villeneuve and the crew to bring in more actors of Middle Eastern and North African descent? Absolutely. And I hope that they do. And, and it's also tricky because I want to get into this without spoiling it because I haven't read past the first book, but even the casting of Timothée Chalamet, this young, good looking white boy, I think that's purposeful to the story, but I don't want to give anything away what happens with Paul. But when people have been observing this movie and they're going, this is a white savior movie. Like that's what this trope is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's tricky because could the movie have addressed it? Yeah, but it might be too early. You see what I'm saying? Like I think that the Dune story addresses it. And I haven't read anything past Dune 1. And I think the second one is called Dune Messiah. I'm pretty sure it's about, the next step or whatever, good or bad.
Right.
So so those are the kind of things that I was thinking about while watching this movie. And I'm also thinking, gentlemen like yourselves and people who have not read Dune or haven't been talked to by a friend who's read all of Dune, they don't know this stuff. So the movie just comes across as Timothée Chalamet is the hero. He is he's somehow the white son of Rebecca Ferguson and Oscar Isaac. Okay, sure. Could he have been a little browner? Yeah, sure. I mean, Oscar Isaac is
but he's
white,
also half witch,
Guatemalan, and exactly. He's half witch, and like so. And I think a lot of the casting of the bad guys, the Harkonnens, was also very purposeful. With Stellan Skarsgård, who was like terrifying.
Oh my Christ! I knew Stellan Skarsgård was in this movie. And when we are introduced to him, I'm like, this is one nasty looking man. Holy God.
That's all from the book. And even from the 80s movie, when you watch the 80s movie, I think it comes across as kind of silly and it doesn't work. But this, he was so
terrifying.
And so, but look at all of those characters, the Harkonnen, what they do is they make them super white, no eyebrows, and I'm like, that's purposeful. Like they've kind of removed the beautiful color that Dave Bautista normally has.
Right,
because he's supposed to be a part of this family and stuff. So,
and that's I think what's been kind of interesting about the movie, because I've had people ask me about that, but I've never read Dune. Like I don't know Dune outside of seeing the David Lynch movie once. I've never read any of the books. I've never really done any deep dives on Dune. The only real context or real like anything that I can kind of connect it to is Star Wars, because you can definitely feel the inspiration and the influence on Star Wars from Dune. So like, that's really all I had going into it. So when these conversations came up, I'm like, totally valid. I have nothing to contribute to this because I don't have any of the context. So yeah, so it was interesting it's interesting to like hear you say that and to know like, okay, let's see what they do in part 2 and how they maybe try to, I don't want to say course correct, but just try to see how they explain it in the context of the movie.
Again, it's kind of rare because even in this day and age, we've seen Hollywood really, really blow it when it comes to stuff like this. But I'm just saying, I think that the care going into this movie, like in making the movie and the people involved, I think that they're aware of some of these issues that spring up when you read half of a book from 1960s. You know what I mean? Like I think they're aware of that, and it's just tricky because it's like it might not be looked at until part 2 or even beyond if they're able to do a third movie, maybe Dune Messiah. So anyway, but I was just going to say, to your point, Adam, like even I don't feel qualified to talk about all of this kind of stuff because again, I'm not a Dune expert, and I'm also not a person of Middle Eastern descent who knows more. Like there are scholars of the Frank Herbert Dune mythology who are also like Middle Eastern, so they know their shit. And I would just say to anybody listening, like, look that stuff up and read what those folks are saying.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of least we can all do is to just kind of read some stuff, be aware of it. But again, it's tricky because it's like maybe we don't want to be spoiled for part 2. So maybe this is all a conversation we can revisit in a few years when part 2 comes out. And then with the full picture really being like, okay, did they drop the ball or did they know what they were doing? And then they kind of, you know, so we'll see. But
I also tend to look at like the general filmography of a director. I feel like, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I feel like Denis Villeneuve, for the most part, he's very, I would say, forward thinking. Like Lady Jessica's role, from what I read, is way more expanded in the movie. Then you look at Sicario, you look at Arrival. You know, like the leading characters are women. So I think he is somebody who like doesn't necessarily like disregard those things. He thinks about it and he tries to put it in an effort. I don't know if it's good enough, but I feel like there is an effort. So I don't know. I guess again, we have to kind of wait for part 2 to see how they explain it.
Right. There's a lot of unanswered stuff here. And I personally did not know that this was part 1 of several parts of whatever they're going to do here.
Yeah, because the movie title in the movie tells you it's part 1, but all the advertising just says Dune.
Nothing tells you that it's just that it's anything really.
Which I do feel a little bit like, I don't, if
bamboozled.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like I knew that it was part 1 of part 2, but I can totally see how people going into it are like, this just feels like you were just setting up a franchise. I'm like, you probably should have told people that this was purposely a part 1 of 2, because Villeneuve was I won't do it unless it's 2 parts because it's just too expansive, which I'm like, me knowing that, I'm like, great, I'm in. But general people are like, I feel like I got half a movie. I'm like, you did. But they told you, but they didn't tell you.
They did tell you. And they literally said part 1.
Yeah.
And when they said part 1, my mind instantly changed. I'm like, oh, okay, I've seen Lord of the Rings. I know what a part 1 ending is going to be like.
Right.
You know, we've all seen movies that end this way. So I personally just, even though I was not warned, it didn't bother me at all the way this movie ended.
No, not me either at all.
Yeah.
I just want to say my favorite character in the movie is Stilgar, Javier Bardem, after that one spitting scene.
Oh,
that dude!
My God,
that dude has such a presence. It's unreal how awesome Javier Bardem is.
He walked into that room
like, oh my God,
just
this guy?
Spit, and I was like, okay, this is the intensity that this man is leading. Like he feels so in charge and just so present and so just in the moment. I was like, I want more of this character so desperately bad. And I don't know the last movie that I saw him in. It wasn't Skyfall, but it feels like it was Skyfall. But like that presence and his just like the way he just comes in and just is like, I don't give a shit. Like it's just so
he commands
magnetic.
the room. He commands the room.
That room.
My favorite character was Space Daddy Oscar Isaac, man. So Oscar Isaac.
When he did the one tear, when they told him like your son is dead, your wife is dead, and you're like, you want to tell him, no, they're not. It's okay. But he did the one tear.
The one tear acting, top notch. But also the hair, the beard, just like the suit with the come on, man. He's like. He joined the upper levels of like iconic sci-fi characters with that look, with that presence, being who he is.
Space Daddy.
It's Space Daddy. He's
him with that 18-week-old beard.
Yeah, dude.
So good.
He was my favorite character for sure.
Yeah.
Really good. Really good.
Yeah, I mean, and the movie, I think, balances intense moments with lighthearted moments, with action moments. That is the one thing I do want to say is I did feel like some of the hand-to-hand combat at times was a little tough to follow.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It suffers a little bit from what I think Christopher Nolan's action scenes suffer from, is the coverage is too tight. Like, I want the cameras farther back so I can feel like I'm watching an actual fight. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching stuff that's cut together because they're like, it kind of works. Let's just edit it together.
You wanted that Shang-Chi, baby.
Yes, we wanted the dope kung fu. I mean, they don't do kung fu, but also I think the personal shields that my only gripe about the VFX are the personal shields were really obstructing a lot of the movement because there was blue and red flashes passing each other and you didn't really know like who was hitting who and you couldn't tell if the hit was slow enough.
Bro,
pass through the shield
I wish part 2 was already out. I wish this was like the Matrix where like we just had to wait 6 months. Like they already filmed that shit.
Download it into my head.
Because I want to show you guys now the 80s David Lynch movie because the personal shields in that look like the time travel doors in Loki. They're literally these like little orange molasses square cubes, and they look so jank, and it's so funny, so great. So I hear what you're saying, Augustine, but at the same time, I'm just comparing it to that. So I'm like, dude, the new shields in this new movie look dope, dude. They look so good. They look great.
Yeah, and in terms of the story and the pacing, I would say, and I told this to Augustine too, is sometimes when we're constantly, they're not well, some of it is flashback, but some of it is also flashing to Zendaya's character and the visions that he sees.
Yeah.
For me, sometimes it would slow down the forward momentum of the movie.
Sure.
But I know that they're important because every time we see her, they're different and they give you a little bit of a different perspective of the story. So that's really it. But otherwise, like, I felt like this movie, the pacing was really, really good. And I never got bored in that movie. That movie moved and it kept going and it didn't stop.
Augustine, when's the last time you did watch all the Lord of the Rings in one day? Theatrical edition. I feel like not since our 20s, right? I feel like we don't have the stamina.
It has not been since, like, I'm 37 now. I was probably like 31.
Oh, that's not that long ago.
I'm thinking maybe for the holidays. Maybe for the holidays we can do it. Maybe put them on in the background when we're doing Friendsgiving or something. But I will say, at the end of this movie, I was imagining a few years from now, Dune Part 2 comes out. And then you can just do both in one sitting. And I'm like, that is a lot of sitting, but that's
a long day.
That's going to be juicy. Like, I can't wait for that.
Here's the thing. It feels long when you watch it at AMC theaters because they have 30 minutes of ads.
Oh my God.
You don't have that.
And then Nicole Kidman telling me I should go to AMC.
Holy Christ.
Where do you think I am, Nicole?
What am I doing here already?
I love trailers. I love seeing trailers on the big screen, but that is just too damn long.
Nicole, what do you think I'm at Regal right now? ArcLight's dead. I'm at AMC.
Edward Cinema? Come on, man.
Nicole, I'm out of my living room.
Is this Cinemark? Jesus Christ.
Why are you showing me this commercial, AMC?
It's
You're making me mad.
I'm at the drive-in.
You're making me mad at Nicole.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. And that was the one thing about, seeing something like Eternals early was there's no trailer. The movie just starts. And I'm not saying no trailers, but like, come on. 2 trailers and Nicole Kidman and then let's go. Yeah.
I'm a Stubbs member. Come on. I don't need this.
I should get to the movie faster if I'm a Stubbs member.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm A-list.
Can you A-list?
Can you give me the A-list screening, please?
Yeah, can you send me the actual time the movie's going to start? And I'll be sure to be there before that. I'm A-list.
I'll be there before that. Thank you. I can cut the line to get popcorn before everybody else.
Cut the ads.
Tell me I can't cut these ads out?
Making me look bad in front of my girlfriend. She's thinking I'm making us late. And I'm like, sweetheart, we got 30 minutes of leftover time. We're good. Movie starts at 1. We can roll in at 1:20.
They give you a good buffer.
We're fine. We're not late.
Tons of time.
We're not running late because of me. I'm not running late. We're good.
Oh, man.
Watch, you're going to be mad. You're going to be mad sitting through 30 minutes. I told you you're going to be mad sitting through 30 minutes.
You're going to be mad.
I tried to get here. I tried.
Try to get here late.
Sorry.
Too bad.
Tried. Should have got another drink at the bar.
Anyway, Dune is sick. Everybody should see it.
It's hell. It's
go
super
watch
sick.
fucking Dune, you guys.
Yeah.
You should definitely go check it out. Again, I want to go see it in IMAX because it's the last week. If you can watch it in digital IMAX, watch it in digital IMAX. If there is an IMAX theater near you that has like full 1:4:3 projection, there are some sequences in the movie that are in 1:4:3. The only theater that we can watch it in that does that is the Universal Studios IMAX. So if you can find a theater that's playing in that format, watch it. I think you'll love it. But yeah, check out Dune. It's so damn good. And if you've never seen a Villeneuve movie before this, you should definitely check out his filmography. He's got other movies that I think are also exceptional. I always talk about Sicario.
Some of them are pretty intense.
For sure. I always talk about Sicario and Prisoners, and I always with the asterisk of it's very intense, so be prepared. It's going to be a long night. But let us know in the comments below what you thought about Dune Part 1. What did you think? Are you somebody who has read the book? How did it compare to the movie? And are you excited for Part 2? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys in the next review. Bye!